B, C, D, E, F, G, A minor, B minor, C minor, D minor, E minor, F minor, G minor, A7, B7, C7, D7, D7, F, G, E, So this week we're going to be looking at how we can break out of these 3 frets, where most of us tend to hang out when we're learning, improving, and actually even when we're somewhat accomplished. These open chords, and sometimes referred to as cowboy chords, are where we started and are therefore what's comfortable. But we're only using 3 times 21.42% of the guitar's potential. So how do we break out of here and start using this part of the guitar? How do we break out from behind these 3 bars? By using the ironically named CAGED system. One sec. Now, the CAGED system has nothing to do with cages and more to do with the chords C, A, G, E and D, or more specifically, those chord shapes. You see, we can use the chord shapes from C, A, G, E and D and move them along the fretboard, which results in different chords which have different sonic values to the typical open chords we use here. Playing a G chord down here sounds very differently to playing a G chord up here. It also means that wherever you are on the fretboard within any given piece of music, you're never that far away from the next chord you need. Many of us first learn about this when learning our first bar chords, which use an E shape. An F bar chord is just an E shape moved up a fret. The index finger just replaces the nut. So similar to putting a capo on the first fret and just playing a regular E chord. So an E shape moved up a fret with our index finger over the first fret becomes an F chord. So it's an E-shaped bar chord playing an F. Move it all up to a G, move it again to an A, and so on and so forth. So that is our E shape in the CAGED system. So next on the list for most of us is the A-shaped bar chord. That's because you can't really play a B chord in an open shape. So most of us play it like this. So a B chord is simply an A shape moved up a whole tone, then barred. Move it up again, becomes a C, becomes a D, E, etc, etc, you get the point. So now we have our E shape and our A shape in the CAGED system. The next ones start to get a little bit more interesting. Right, let's go D next. I get quite a lot of use out of this D shape, particularly when playing rhythm guitar on an electric. When the main rhythm instrument is an acoustic guitar, but I'm backing that instrument up on an electric guitar, but I'm still playing rhythm, but it still needs to sound different. So the same theory applies. The 3 notes in our D chord make a D triad. So move that along a tone, we get an E, an F, a G, and so on and so forth. But this is quite tricky to bar. So a little trick to make the chord sound fuller is to place your pinky finger on the 4th fret, right about there. So that pinky finger is playing an F sharp, which is part of the D triad. It's just an inversion of a D chord. It's still a D, it's actually a D over F sharp, but we can use it in the same way. It now sounds much better and much fuller if we play it down here as a G chord or an A chord or wherever you want to play it. So that is our D-shaped bar chord. So let's have a look at that D over F sharp again and say we wanted to put a low D bass note back in, which would be here. So we could use our pinky to play that and then play the rest of the chord like this. Well, that looks a lot like a C chord. So I think we've just found our C-shaped bar chord. C, when moved down a whole tone and barred, becomes a D and an E and an F, and you get the idea. So that's when things get interesting, when we spot that all of these chords and their shapes are linked. A G here with a C-shaped bar chord is actually the same as a G with a D-shaped bar chord, just without the G bass note. Now, as you play around with these more, you start to spot these links that just by moving a finger or adding a finger on in a different position can result in the same chord in a different position. So D shape, C shape, that only leaves our G shape. Now, it is somewhat tricky to bar a G, I'm not gonna lie. Not impossible, it just doesn't flow well from other nearby bar chords. But when we're playing somewhere down here to get a different sound or to make an easier move from a nearby chord, we don't always need a full chord. 5 out of 6 strings is often enough. So what I tend to do is miss out that little finger entirely and sort of do it like this. So I'll tuck that one under for now, just so you can see. I've got the top 2 of what would be a G shape covered, and then my index finger bars the rest. So that's our G shape. Now, all of these rules apply to our minor chords and 7th chords too, or any other chord name you can think of. So if removing our index finger turns an E into an E minor, well then the same can be said about an F minor, G minor, A minor. So that is our E minor shaped bar chord being used. An A minor can also be slid along to create a B minor, C minor, D minor, E minor, and so on. You get the idea. And then things become really interesting when we start to spot shapes that aren't really even known shapes. So let's say we're playing a C with our A-shaped bar chord, but we need something a little more jangly. Now, we know from our E-shaped bar chord that our index finger covers these 2 high notes, the G and the C. So, put our A-shaped bar chord back in the C position, and let's say we introduce a pinky finger onto those 2 notes. That's a bit of a stretch, but it gives a lovely jangly sound, especially on an electric guitar. So we've got a C chord made up of these 2 high notes in a C chord, the G and the C, and part of that A-shape bar chord. Hope that makes sense. And with that, my friends, you have unlocked your fretboard. Take a deep breath and inhale that freedom. I do hope this video has made sense. It made sense in my head, but I may have just confused everyone even more so. But if it worked for you, please do consider subscribing for more guitar related content. I do also try to cover songwriting in other videos, so if that's something you're into, all the more reason to stick around. Leave us a comment, gently tap the like button, and perhaps I'll see you in the next video. Suppose I better tidy all this away now. Cup of tea.